A forgotten civilization built the modern world with 28 brilliant inventions. The ancient Mediterranean was a stage for empires, but one small coastal people were the true engine of progress. They were the Phoenicians, master traders and innovators whose ideas still echo in our lives today. By the end of this journey, you will know the full story of their incredible legacy, from the letters you are reading to the very concept of a corporation. How did a people with no vast empire manage to knit the ancient world together? And why were so many of their world-changing ideas later credited to others? What does it truly mean for an entire civilization to vanish from popular memory? Their greatest invention began with a simple, revolutionary idea. What if every sound in a word could be represented by its own symbol? This was the genius of the Phoenician alphabet, a system so elegant it reshaped human communication forever. Before its arrival, writing was a complex art form reserved for elite scribes. Vast libraries of knowledge were locked away in the intricate symbols of Egyptian hieroglyphics or the wedge-shaped marks of Mesopotamian cuneiform. Learning these systems took years of dedicated study, placing the power of the written word firmly in the hands of a privileged few. The Phoenicians, pragmatic merchants to their core, saw a problem that needed a practical solution. How could they keep records, draft contracts, and send orders across vast distances without an army of scribes? Their answer was a set of just 22 characters, each representing a consonant sound. This was a phonetic alphabet where you could look at a word and sound it out. It was a tool designed not for priests or kings, but for sailors, traders, and shopkeepers. Imagine a merchant in the port of Tyre. He could now quickly jot down an inventory of goods on a piece of papyrus, a task that once required carving into clay or stone. This new script was portable, fast, and remarkably easy to learn. Literacy was no longer a lifetime's pursuit, but a skill that could be acquired in a matter of weeks. The democratization of writing had begun. The impact rippled outwards with the speed of a trade ship under full sail. Suddenly, complex business agreements could be recorded with clarity. Instructions could be sent to far-flung colonies without fear of misinterpretation. Knowledge could be shared and stored with unprecedented efficiency. This was the operating system for their commercial empire, and it was about to be adopted by the entire ancient world. The Greeks encountered this revolutionary script through their trade contacts and immediately saw its potential. They made one crucial addition, adapting some of the consonant signs to represent vowel sounds, which created the first true alphabet capable of capturing the full nuance of spoken language. This Greek alphabet would, in turn, become the foundation for the Latin script used by the Romans, the very same letters you are reading right now. Every book, every street sign, every text message owes a silent debt to those 22 simple characters born on the shores of the Levant. The power to write, and thus to record history, was no longer a secret kept by the few. It was a gift to the many, a key that would unlock countless doors of innovation yet to come. But the alphabet was not the only tool the Phoenicians needed to protect their growing empire of commerce. Their ships carried priceless cargo across treacherous seas, making them tempting targets for pirates and rival states. The solution was a vessel so advanced it became the ultimate symbol of their naval power, the bireme. This was not merely a ship, it was a masterpiece of military engineering. Picture a long, slender galley, its hull cutting through the water with predatory grace. The key to its speed and agility lay in its two distinct levels of oars, one bank positioned above the other. This ingenious double-decker design allowed them to pack twice the rowing power into a hull of the same length as a single-level ship. With dozens of oars churning the water in unison, the bireme could accelerate to ramming speed in moments and execute sharp, tactical turns that left bulkier vessels floundering. Its primary weapon was a massive, bronze-sheathed ram fixed to the prow, designed to punch clean through an enemy's hull. For the first time, a warship was not just a floating platform for soldiers to fight from, it was the weapon itself. This revolutionary design allowed the Phoenicians to dominate the sea lanes. Their fleets could sweep the Mediterranean clear of pirates, ensuring that their merchant vessels, laden with purple dye, glass, and cedar wood, reached their destinations safely. They established secure trade routes that stretched from the Levant to the Atlantic coast of Spain, a network protected by the swift and terrifying bireme. The effectiveness of this warship was so undeniable that it was quickly adopted and adapted by every major naval power in the ancient world. The Greeks studied the Phoenician design closely, refining it into their own famous trireme, which added a third bank of oars. The Romans, too, built their legendary navy upon this foundational template. The bireme fundamentally changed the nature of naval combat, shifting the focus from boarding and hand-to-hand fighting to speed, maneuverability, and the devastating power of the ram. This single invention secured the flow of wealth and ideas across the ancient world for centuries, proving that true power often lies not in the strength of an empire, but in the brilliance of its designs. While their ships secured the seas, the wealth they protected often took a truly magnificent form, a color so rare it became the ultimate status symbol of the ancient world. This was Tyrian purple, a dye worth more than its weight in silver, a luxury so potent it defined royalty for millennia. Its origin was as humble as its final product was exalted. The secret was locked within the murex, a small sea snail found in the coastal waters of the eastern Mediterranean. Harvesting the dye was a notoriously difficult and foul-smelling process. Thousands of these snails were gathered, their shells cracked open to extract a tiny gland that produced a mere droplet of a milky, colorless liquid. This precious substance was then slowly simmered in vast lead vats for days, exposed to sunlight to trigger a miraculous chemical transformation. The liquid would shift through a spectrum of colors, finally settling into that deep, rich, and unmistakable purple, a color that did not fade but grew brighter and more vibrant with age and exposure to the sun. The staggering amount of labor involved was the very source of its value. It is said that it took the glands of 12,000 snails to produce just a single gram of pure dye, enough to color only the trim of a single garment. This immense effort created an economic monopoly for Phoenician cities like Tyre, which grew immensely wealthy, controlling the entire production chain from harvesting to dyeing. The result was a fabric so expensive that only emperors, kings, and the highest priests could afford it. In Rome, sumptuary laws eventually restricted the use of Tyrian purple to the emperor alone, making it a literal embodiment of imperial power. To wear this color was to declare your divinity, your authority, and your immense wealth without uttering a single word. The Phoenicians had not merely created a product, they had manufactured desire itself, crafting a visual language of power that would echo from the robes of Roman emperors to the cardinals of the Catholic Church. They understood that true influence often lies not in force, but in possessing something so beautiful and so exclusive that the entire world craves it. That same spirit of transformation, turning the mundane into the magnificent, extended from the dye vats to the fiery furnace. While the world coveted their purple, the Phoenicians were quietly perfecting another art form, one that would bring the brilliance of gemstones to the common household. Their breakthrough was glassblowing, a technique so simple in concept yet so revolutionary that it would shatter the old limits of this ancient material. Before this innovation, creating a glass vessel was a painstaking and expensive process known as core forming. Artisans would carefully shape a core of clay and dung, then dip it into molten glass or trail strands of glass around it, slowly building up the form. The result was beautiful, but each piece was unique, time-consuming to produce and reserved for the wealthy elite. Glass was a luxury item, a fragile treasure. The Phoenician glassblowers of the 1st century before the Common Era looked at this slow, difficult process and saw a better way. they discovered that by gathering a molten blob of glass on the end of a long, hollow metal tube, they could do something miraculous. They could blow into it. With a single breath, the craftsman could inflate the glass into a bubble, a perfect hollow form. Using simple tools, gravity, and incredible skill, they could then shape that bubble into a bottle, a bowl, or a beaker. This was the true birth of mass production for glass. Where a core-formed vessel might take a day to create, a glassblower could produce dozens in the same amount of time. The cost of glassware plummeted, and for the first time in history, ordinary people could own glass containers. Imagine a Roman merchant now able to store his wine in a clear glass amphora, or a family using a sturdy glass cup instead of a heavy clay one. This was a quiet revolution in daily life, bringing transparency, cleanliness, and a touch of beauty to the ancient world. The Phoenicians did not stop with clear glass. They mastered the art of color, producing pieces in deep cobalt blue, emerald green, and an opaque white that mimicked precious porcelain. They traded these vibrant vessels everywhere, from the markets of Athens to the outposts of Britain, making their glass one of the most ubiquitous and desired commodities in the empire. This innovation did not just change what people owned, it changed what they could see. Clear glass allowed for the first time a clear view of the contents within, fostering new industries in perfumery, medicine, and food storage. The act of blowing glass, a single human breath shaping a molten dream, was a spark that would eventually lead to windows, lenses, and the entire science of optics. It was a democratization of light and clarity, another invisible thread woven by the Phoenicians into the fabric of our modern world. The bireme's reign of the seas was spectacular, but it was not the final word in Phoenician shipbuilding. Their relentless drive for naval superiority led to an even more formidable creation, the trireme. This was the bireme's evolutionary leap, a vessel that stacked a third level of oarsmen atop the existing two. The engineering challenge was immense, requiring a longer, stronger hull and an intricate, staggered arrangement of oar ports. The payoff, however, was raw, unadulterated power. With nearly 200 rowers propelling it forward, the trireme could achieve bursts of speed close to 10 knots, transforming it into a living missile on the water. Its bronze ram, now driven by triple the manpower, could smash through the stoutest enemy hulls with terrifying ease. This was not just a ship, it was the ultimate expression of maritime force. The trireme's prowess was proven on the grandest stage of the ancient world, the Persian Wars, when the vast Persian fleet, heavily reliant on Phoenician-built and often Phoenician-manned triremes, faced the united Greek city-states at the Battle of Salamis. The clash was a symphony of naval destruction orchestrated by this very design. The narrow straits became a killing zone where the trireme's speed and maneuverability decided the fate of empires. For generations, this three-tiered warship became the indispensable tool of any power that wished to control the Mediterranean. Its distinctive silhouette, a forest of oars rising from the water, was as much a psychological weapon as a physical one, a symbol of overwhelming force that could project power across thousands of miles of coastline. The Phoenicians had not only perfected the warship, they had defined the very essence of naval strategy for centuries to come, proving that the key to ruling the ancient world was not just what you built, but how masterfully you could move it across the sea. Their mastery of the sea demanded more than just powerful ships. It required an unerring sense of direction when the coastline vanished behind them. The Phoenicians became the ancient world's greatest celestial navigators, turning the night sky into their roadmap. Their most trusted guide was the North Star, Polaris, a fixed point of light around which the entire heavens seemed to slowly turn. While other stars moved through the night, Polaris held its position in the northern sky, a constant, unwavering beacon. By measuring the angle of this star above the horizon with simple tools, a Phoenician captain could always know his latitude, his position north or south. This single star allowed them to sail straight across the open ocean for days on end, confident they were on the correct east-west course, a feat that felt like magic to their land-bound contemporaries. But they did not rely on a single star alone. They compiled this hard-won knowledge into the world's first known navigational manuals, detailed star maps and written peripli or sailing guides that recorded coastlines, landmarks, currents, and the rising and setting positions of key constellations. These were state secrets closely guarded by their merchant princes. With these tools in hand, the Phoenicians dared voyages that seem audacious even today. They sailed beyond the Pillars of Hercules, our Strait of Gibraltar, and pushed north into the stormy Atlantic, reaching as far as the tin-rich islands of Britain. According to the Greek historian Herodotus, they may have even accomplished the ultimate maritime circumnavigation, sailing all the way around the continent of Africa from east to west, a journey that supposedly took 3 years. Whether this epic tale is true or not, their celestial navigation fundamentally reshaped the map of the known world. They proved the oceans were not impassable barriers but highways, waiting only for those who knew how to read the signs written in the stars. Beneath the decks of their mighty warships lay an unseen innovation that made every long voyage possible. The structural keel was the hidden backbone of Phoenician naval power, a single, solid timber running the entire length of the ship's hull. This was not merely part of the frame, it was the central spine from which the entire vessel gained its strength. Think of it as the foundation of a great building, the rigid beam that keeps everything from twisting and buckling under immense pressure. In the open ocean, where waves could easily break a weaker ship in two, the keel allowed Phoenician galleys to flex and endure, absorbing the relentless punishment of the sea. It gave their ships a deep, weighted stability, preventing them from capsizing in heavy winds and allowing them to hold a straighter course. This single piece of engineering transformed a coastal craft into a true ocean-going vessel, capable of surviving the treacherous swells of the Atlantic. Yet a strong hull is useless if it leaks like a sieve. The Phoenicians solved this ancient problem with a substance as black as midnight, pitch. They harvested this thick, tar-like material from the vast pine forests of their homeland, heating it until it became a sticky, viscous liquid. Their shipbuilders would then meticulously pack this hot pitch into the seams between the wooden planks of the hull, a process called caulking. As the pitch cooled and hardened, it formed a perfect, waterproof seal, locking out the relentless sea. This was the final, crucial step in creating a truly watertight vessel. Without it, a ship would slowly fill with water, its crew doomed to a constant, losing battle with the bilge pumps, their cargo ruined by the salt water. With pitch caulking, a Phoenician ship could stay at sea for weeks, its hull as dry as a merchant's warehouse. The keel gave them strength and the pitch gave them endurance. Together, these two humble inventions formed the bedrock of their maritime empire. They were not glamorous like Tyrian purple, nor dramatic like the bronze ram, but they were utterly essential. Every voyage to the tin mines of Britain, every journey beyond the Pillars of Hercules, every ship that carried their alphabet and their glass relied on this hidden strength and perfect seal. It was a testament to their understanding that true greatness is often built not on a single brilliant idea, but on a foundation of countless perfectly executed details. That mastery of the sea and shipbuilding required an equally brilliant system for moving cargo, and for this the Phoenicians turned to clay. The amphora was their simple, elegant answer, a two-handled ceramic jar that became the undisputed workhorse of ancient commerce. Picture these tall, tapered vessels, their pointed bottoms and sturdy handles making them perfectly suited for their life at sea. They were stacked like pillars in the dark, rocking holds of ships, their bases fitting snugly between the shoulders of the jars in the layer below, a stable, interlocking puzzle that maximized space and minimized breakage. Their design was a triumph of pure function. The narrow neck could be sealed with a cork or a clay stopper and then covered with pitch, creating an airtight environment that preserved precious liquids for months, even years on a long voyage. The two handles allowed a single person to lift and carry them with a secure grip, whether they were being loaded onto a cart or carried through a bustling foreign market. But the true genius of the amphora lay in its standardization. Across the vast Phoenician trade network, these jars were produced in consistent shapes and sizes. A merchant in Carthage knew exactly how many amphorae of olive oil would fit in the hold of a ship arriving from Tyre. A buyer in Sicily could trust that the volume of wine he purchased was the same as the last shipment. This created a universal system of measurement, a predictable and reliable container that streamlined the entire process of loading, shipping, and selling. These humble jars carried the lifeblood of the ancient economy: wine from the hills of Lebanon, olive oil from North Africa, precious grains, fish sauce, and even dyes. They were so common that archaeologists now use the scattered fragments of amphorae found from Portugal to the Black Sea to map the incredible reach of Phoenician trade routes. In essence, the amphora was the ancient world's shipping container, a modular, durable, and standardized unit that made globalized trade possible for the first time. It was the physical network that connected producer to consumer across thousands of miles, proving that the most transformative systems are often the simplest ones, built not for glory, but for the quiet, efficient work of building a world. Their celestial navigation relied on more than just memory and the human eye. The Phoenician obsession with the stars drove them to create one of the earliest known precursors to the astrolabe, a device for measuring the altitude of celestial bodies. This was not the intricate brass instrument of medieval astronomers yet, but a far simpler, brilliant concept. Imagine a simple wooden disc marked with degrees attached to a movable pointer or a weighted string. A sailor would hold it vertically and sight along the pointer toward the North Star, reading the angle from the hanging string. This measurement, the star's height above the horizon, gave them their latitude. It was a tool that translated the vast, abstract dome of the night sky into a practical, numerical reading. This instrument solved a critical problem for a merchant captain far from land. How could he be sure he was on the correct parallel, sailing straight toward the tin mines of Cornwall or the silver-rich rivers of southern Spain? By taking a nightly reading, he could correct his course, ensuring his ship did not drift unknowingly north or south into dangerous, uncharted waters. This early astrolabe brought a new level of precision and confidence to open ocean travel, turning a skilled art into a more reliable science. Later cultures, particularly the Greeks and the Islamic scholars of the Abbasid period, would refine this basic concept into the breathtakingly complex planispheric astrolabe, a two-dimensional model of the universe that could tell time, calculate distances, and predict the movements of the stars. But the foundational idea, the need to measure the sky to find one's way on Earth, was born from Phoenician pragmatism on the open sea. Their contribution was the essential spark, proving that the greatest tools of discovery often begin not in a philosopher's study, but in the hands of a sailor desperate to find his way home. This revolutionary approach to funding was the birth of the corporation. While their ships navigated physical oceans, Phoenician merchants were charting an entirely new economic sea, one built on shared risk and shared reward. A single merchant could never afford to outfit a ship for a 2-year voyage to the tin mines of Britain, a journey fraught with storms, pirates, and the very real chance of total loss. The solution was brilliantly simple, yet it would change the world of commerce forever. They began pooling their resources. Multiple investors, from wealthy nobles to successful ship captains, would contribute capital to fund a single expedition. In return, they received a share of the profits proportional to their initial investment. This was a revolutionary financial instrument, an early form of corporate stock. For the first time, the immense risk of a long-distance trading venture was distributed across many shoulders, making it possible to undertake journeys that were unthinkable for an individual. If a ship sank, no single family was ruined. The loss was absorbed by the group. but if it returned laden with silver, tin, and amber, every investor reaped a portion of the spectacular reward. This system of joint stock companies fueled the expansion of their trade network into a true commercial empire. It allowed for the establishment of permanent, fortified trading posts like Carthage, which were essentially corporate colonies funded by syndicates of investors back in Tyre or Sidon. These were not state-sponsored missions of conquest, but business ventures established for profit and sustained by a continuous flow of capital. This model separated ownership from management, another cornerstone of the modern corporation. An investor did not need to be a sailor, he merely needed to trust in the venture and the crew. This freed up capital and specialized labor on an unprecedented scale. The very idea that you could own a piece of a business you never saw, managed by people you might never meet, was a Phoenician innovation. It was a social contract written in silver and spice, one that would eventually pave the way for the Dutch East India Company, the Industrial Revolution, and the globalized economy we know today. They had discovered that the greatest resource was not buried in the ground, but pooled in the collective ambition of people daring to invest in a distant, uncertain future. But a universal container was only half the solution for a merchant empire. How could a trader in Carthage be certain that the weight of silver he received for his amphorae of wine was honest, or that the grain he purchased in Sicily was the full measure promised? The answer was another invisible pillar of their commercial system: standardized weights and measures. Across the vast Phoenician network from the Levant to the Atlantic, a single, reliable standard emerged. A specific weight of stone or metal, often carved into the shape of a duck or a lion, was recognized as a legitimate shekel. A precise volume defined by a bronze vessel was accepted as a true unit of grain or oil. This was not a government mandate in the modern sense, but a hard-won consensus built on the sheer utility and reliability of the Phoenician system. For the first time, a merchant could travel thousands of miles and engage in complex transactions without needing to constantly bicker over the value of a handful of silver or the capacity of a jar. Trust was built directly into the scales and the measuring cups. A transaction became faster, simpler, and far less prone to the arguments and violent disputes that had plagued cross-cultural trade for centuries. This standardization was the grease that smoothed the gears of international commerce. It meant a ship's captain could calculate his potential profit before he even set sail, knowing the value of his cargo at its destination. It allowed for the creation of consistent price lists and the first forms of long-distance contracts. The Phoenicians had effectively created a common commercial language, spoken not in words but in weights and volumes. This system was so effective, so indispensable, that it was adopted by every major power that traded with them. The Hebrews used the Phoenician shekel. The Greeks integrated their standards. Even the Romans, with their own meticulous systems, built upon this foundational concept. The idea that a pound of flour in one city should be identical to a pound of flour in another, that a unit of currency should have a fixed and known value, this is a Phoenician legacy. They proved that for a global economy to function, it requires more than just ships and goods. It requires a universal meter stick, a silent agreement between strangers that builds the trust upon which all wealth depends. This phonetic principle was the true lightning bolt of genius. Before its arrival, writing was a game of complex association. An Egyptian hieroglyph of an owl represented not just the bird, but a complex set of ideas and sounds tied to it. Learning to read meant memorizing thousands of these intricate symbols, each one a unique picture with multiple potential meanings. It was a system that demanded a lifetime of study, effectively reserving the power of the written word for a tiny, insulated class of scribes and priests. The Phoenician breakthrough was to strip all of that away. They asked a radically simple question: what if we forget the object itself and just record the sound it makes when we say its name? This was the birth of the phonetic principle, the revolutionary idea that a written symbol should represent a single, consistent sound from the human voice. Their 22 characters were not pictures of things, they were notations for the basic consonants that formed the building blocks of their language. This abstract leap in thinking transformed writing from an arcane art into a logical, learnable system. It shifted the burden from endless memorization to a straightforward process of decoding. If you knew the sounds each symbol made, you could sound out any word put in front of you. Literacy was no longer a secret handshake known only to the initiated. A merchant could teach his children the entire alphabet in a matter of weeks. A ship's captain, far from any royal court, could read a cargo manifest or a set of navigational instructions written by a partner in another city. This was the ultimate democratization of knowledge. The power to record laws, to write a contract, to send a private message, or to preserve a family recipe was suddenly within reach of the common person. The phonetic alphabet broke the monopoly of the scribble class and unleashed a torrent of human potential. It made possible everything from posted laws that any citizen could read to the personal letters that connected families across vast distances. This was not merely a new way to write, it was a new way to think, a tool that empowered the individual and laid the intellectual groundwork for the flourishing of arts, sciences, and governance that would follow. The very fact that you can read these words today is a direct result of that single, profound shift from representing ideas to capturing the sound of the human voice. Even the mightiest bireme could not fight the sea forever. Saltwater corroded bronze rams, barnacles clung to sleek hulls like a disease, and hidden rocks could tear a fatal gash in the strongest timbers. A ship pulled onto the beach for repairs was vulnerable, lying on its side, its most damaged parts buried in the sand. The Phoenician solution was a masterpiece of practical engineering, the dry dock. Imagine a stone-walled basin dug right at the water's edge with a single, massive gate facing the sea. When a ship needed care, the gate would be opened at high tide, allowing the vessel to sail directly into this artificial harbor. Then the gate was sealed shut. The water was pumped out, often using simple but effective manual pumps or even redirected streams, leaving the ship standing high and dry, cradled perfectly upright on a network of wooden supports. For the first time, every inch of a ship's hull was completely accessible. Craftsmen could swarm over it, scraping away the marine growth that slowed a ship's passage, replacing rotten planks and resealing every seam with fresh, hot pitch. They could inspect and repair the most critical part of the vessel, the bronze ram, which was impossible to properly maintain while the ship was afloat. This was not a luxury, it was a strategic necessity. A dry dock could turn a months-long repair job on a beach into a matter of days, effectively doubling the active life of every ship in their fleet. It meant their naval squadrons could be kept in a constant state of readiness, and their precious merchantmen could spend more time earning profit and less time sitting idle. This innovation gave the Phoenicians an unparalleled logistical advantage. While their rivals were still hauling ships onto open beaches, exposed to the elements and enemy attack, the Phoenicians had secure, private shipyards where they could maintain their maritime supremacy in secret. The dry dock was the unsung hero of their thalassocracy, the hidden maintenance bay that kept their empire of trade flowing, season after season, decade after decade. Their mass production of glass began with the humble bead, by dipping a copper rod into molten glass and then winding thin, colored threads of it around a clay core. A single artisan could create hundreds of vibrant beads in a single day. These were not the crude, monochrome spheres of earlier cultures. Phoenician beads were miniature masterpieces, layered with intricate patterns of cobalt blue, creamy white, and translucent green. They were the ancient world's first affordable luxury, a piece of shimmering art that could be owned by anyone from a Celtic chieftain in Britain to a farmer's wife in Egypt. These tiny, glittering objects became a universal currency of beauty and status, carried by Phoenician traders to the farthest corners of their known world. But their true genius lay in the core-forming technique for vessels. Artisans would sculpt a core of clay and dung into the desired shape of a bottle's interior. They would then heat this core and roll it in fragments of colored glass or carefully trail molten glass around it, building up the walls layer by layer. Once the glass cooled, the brittle clay core was scraped out, leaving behind a hollow, brilliantly colored container. This method allowed for a startling level of consistency. A workshop could produce dozens of nearly identical perfume bottles or small oil flasks in a single batch, each one a shimmering echo of the last. This was the birth of the assembly line for delicate goods. By standardizing the process, they drove down the cost of glassware dramatically. A beautiful, core-formed glass vial that once only a queen could afford was now within reach of a prosperous merchant. This democratization of glass spread the material's technology and artistry like wildfire. As these objects traveled along trade routes, so did the knowledge of how they were made. The very sight of a translucent glass vessel sparked curiosity and ambition in other cultures, who began to experiment with their own glassmaking. The Phoenicians were not just selling a product, they were seeding an industrial revolution, transforming a secret, elite craft into a global industry that would illuminate the ancient world. That universal need for a reliable measure of value found its ultimate expression in silver. The Phoenician obol was more than just a coin, it was a compact revolution in the palm of your hand. This small, stamped piece of precious metal solved the most fundamental problem of ancient trade, the cumbersome and often unfair system of barter. How many jars of olive oil equal one bolt of fine linen? The answer could change from one market to the next, leading to endless haggling and distrust. The obol cut through all that complexity. Its value was inherent in the silver it contained, and its weight was guaranteed by the authority or the merchant house that minted it. Suddenly, a trader from Tyre could arrive in a Sicilian port and know that his obols would be accepted for grain, for timber, or for a night's lodging. The coin became a universal translator of worth, a medium of exchange that everyone could understand. This was the birth of a true money economy. Wealth was no longer tied solely to bulky goods like cattle or grain, which could spoil or be stolen. It could now be stored, transported, and divided with incredible ease. A merchant could carry his entire fortune in a small chest, secure in the knowledge that he could convert it into any commodity, anywhere along the vast Phoenician trade network. This financial fluidity accelerated commerce to an unprecedented speed. The influence of this reliable currency rippled outwards, profoundly shaping the economic development of their trading partners. The Greeks, who were in intense contact with Phoenician merchants, saw the brilliant efficiency of this system and adopted it wholeheartedly. They began minting their own famous coins, like the Athenian owl, but the foundational idea of a standardized, state-backed currency was a Phoenician gift. The humble obol laid the groundwork for every coin that would follow, from the Roman denarius to the modern dollar, proving that the greatest empires are not always built on land, but on trust solidified in silver. Their skill with timber extended far beyond the shipwright's yard. The legendary cedars of Lebanon provided more than just hulls and masts. They offered a fragrant, durable, and beautifully grained wood that became the canvas for their most advanced carpentry. Phoenician artisans mastered joinery techniques that seemed to defy the very nature of wood, fitting pieces together with such precision that they needed no nails or metal fasteners. They crafted intricate mortise and tenon joints, where a projecting tongue on one piece of wood locked perfectly into a carved slot on another, creating furniture and architectural elements of incredible strength and elegance. This was the art of building without glue or screws, relying solely on the perfect fit of wood against wood. Their workshops produced everything from the soaring roof beams for Egyptian temples to the sleek, streamlined furniture coveted by the wealthy. A Phoenician cedar chest was not merely a container, it was a status symbol, its sweet aroma and flawless construction announcing the owner's refined taste and access to the finest materials the ancient world could offer. But they were not content with the natural beauty of the wood alone. They transformed these functional objects into breathtaking works of art through the painstaking craft of inlay. Using tiny, razor-sharp tools, they would carve delicate channels and patterns into the surface of the cedar. Into these prepared beds, they would press thin slices of gleaming ivory, harvested from African elephants, or hammer strips of soft, precious gold and silver. Their signature innovation, however, was using their own colored glass, cutting it into minute tesserae to create shimmering, vibrant patterns. A simple footstool would suddenly bloom with a lotus flower of white ivory and blue glass. The headboard of a bed might feature a geometric mosaic of gold and deep red glass catching the light from an oil lamp. This was more than decoration, it was a statement of technological and artistic prowess. The inlay was cut so perfectly and set so flush that running your hand over the surface felt perfectly smooth. The different materials fused into a single, seamless image. These objects were among the most sought-after luxury goods in antiquity, traded from Mesopotamia to the Aegean. They represented the pinnacle of Phoenician philosophy, where practical function and sublime beauty were not separate ideals, but two sides of the same expertly crafted coin. Their mastery of the ship demanded an equal command of the shore. A vessel capable of crossing oceans was useless without a safe place to return, a sanctuary from the sea's fury. The Phoenician answer was the anchorage harbor, an artificial fortress of calm water carved from the chaotic coastline. These were not merely natural coveys, they were monumental feats of engineering. Enormous blocks of stone, some weighing many tons, were meticulously set in long, sweeping arcs to form massive breakwaters that reached out from the land like protective arms. These submerged walls absorbed the relentless energy of storm waves, creating a vast, placid lagoon within. Along the inner edges of this lagoon, they constructed sturdy quays, long stone platforms where ships could tie up and unload their cargo directly onto dry land, safe from the surging tides. For the first time, a captain did not have to fear a sudden squall smashing his ship against a rocky shore. He could sail into a guaranteed safe haven, day or night in any season. This security transformed these harbors into the beating hearts of the ancient world. Cities like Tyre and Sidon, built around their fortified anchorages, became legendary centers of global trade. The quays were a constant symphony of activity, with merchants haggling over amphorae of wine, dockworkers unloading crates of Egyptian linen, and scribes recording transactions on papyrus scrolls. Here, a Greek sailor might learn a new celestial navigation trick from a Carthaginian captain, while an Egyptian artisan bartered for an ingot of Spanish silver. The anchorage harbor was more than a parking lot for ships. It was the world's first international airport, a hub where goods, ideas, and cultures met and mingled under the watchful eye of Phoenician efficiency. The design was so brilliant, so fundamentally correct, that it became the universal template for maritime power. Every subsequent Mediterranean power, from the Greeks to the Romans, copied the Phoenician model of the protected artificial harbor. When Rome built its port at Ostia, it was following a blueprint first drawn on the shores of Lebanon. The very concept of a modern port, with its breakwaters and deep water quays, is a direct inheritance from these master builders of the coast. They understood that to truly rule the sea, you must first conquer the shoreline. One of the most audacious claims in all of ancient history begins with an Egyptian pharaoh's simple, staggering command. Necho II, ruler of Egypt, reportedly ordered a crew of Phoenician sailors to attempt the impossible, to find a sea route around the entire continent of Africa. The Greek historian Herodotus recorded this epic journey, a tale so fantastic that even he expressed his own disbelief. He wrote that the Phoenicians set out from the Red Sea, sailing southward with the rising sun on their right hand. For years, there was no word, no sign of their survival. Then, astonishingly, they returned through the Pillars of Hercules, the Strait of Gibraltar, completing a 3-year voyage and claiming they had sailed around Libya, the ancient name for Africa. Herodotus found one detail particularly incredible, their report that at one point in their journey the sun stood in the northern part of the sky. To a Greek, this was pure nonsense, but to us, it is the very proof of their authenticity. For a ship sailing around the southern tip of Africa, the sun does indeed appear to the north at midday, a phenomenon impossible to witness anywhere in the Mediterranean world. This single, seemingly mistaken observation is the strongest evidence that these sailors truly did accomplish what their contemporaries thought was a myth. The logistical challenges they must have overcome are almost beyond comprehension. Keeping a crew supplied and healthy for 3 years, navigating completely unknown coastlines, repairing their ship on foreign shores, and maintaining morale through endless, uncharted waters. This was not just a voyage, it was a monumental feat of human endurance and organizational skill. It demonstrated a geographical understanding centuries ahead of its time, proving that Africa was a continent surrounded by water, a fact that would be forgotten and then rediscovered much later. This legendary journey represents the absolute pinnacle of Phoenician maritime courage. It was the ultimate test of their shipbuilding, their celestial navigation, and their unwavering will to see what lay beyond the next horizon. Whether the story is entirely true or embellished by time, it stands as a powerful testament to their reputation, a civilization so masterful on the seas that even their most unbelievable tales carry the ring of truth. Their naval dominance faced a constant threat from the one tactic their powerful rams could not counter: the agile, evasive enemy. A swift adversary could simply maneuver away from a direct ramming charge, turning a decisive naval clash into a frustrating and endless chase. The Phoenician solution was to bring the land battle to the sea, and their tool for this was a brutal, simple device, the corvus or boarding bridge. This was not a delicate piece of engineering, it was a gangplank of war. Picture a long wooden ramp, perhaps 30 feet in length, hinged at the base to the deck of a Phoenician warship. At its far end was a heavy, sharpened iron spike, like a giant eagle's claw. As their ship closed with an enemy vessel, often after a glancing ramming blow had entangled the two, this bridge was raised and then swung out, crashing down onto the enemy's deck. The iron spike slammed deep into the enemy planking, locking the two ships together in a deadly embrace. In an instant, the nature of the battle was transformed. The rolling, unstable deck of the enemy ship became a fixed platform. The Phoenician Marines, heavily armed infantry waiting in the shadows, would then charge across this bridge in a solid, shield-locked line. A chaotic naval skirmish suddenly became a disciplined infantry engagement, fought on a stage the Phoenicians had created. This was their strategic genius. They refused to fight on their enemy's terms. Why risk a prolonged ship-to-ship skirmish when you could deploy your best soldiers directly onto the enemy's deck, turning their vessel into a killing ground? The corvus neutralized the advantage of more nimble opponents and capitalized on the Phoenician reputation for fielding excellent mercenary soldiers. It was a terrifying psychological weapon. The sight of that bridge swinging down promised not a contest of sailing skill, but a brutal, close-quarters slaughter. While the Romans later famously adopted and gave their name to this device during the Punic Wars, its origins lie in the earlier, pragmatic innovations of Phoenician naval warfare. It perfectly encapsulated their approach to conflict, a blend of engineering and ruthless efficiency. They understood that true victory lay not just in sinking an enemy ship, but in capturing it, its crew, and its valuable cargo, turning a military encounter into a profitable business transaction. Even the waste of kings could be put to work. After the precious dye glands were extracted from the murex snails, the mountains of leftover shells presented a serious problem. These broken, sharp-edged fragments piled up in vast, foul-smelling heaps outside the dye workshops of Tyre and Sidon, a seemingly useless byproduct of a luxury industry. But the pragmatic Phoenicians saw an opportunity where others saw only refuse. They began crushing these shells into a coarse, gritty powder and mixing them with clay and gravel to create a remarkably stable and durable building material. This was one of the world's earliest and most ingenious examples of industrial recycling. They used this shell concrete to pave roads, creating surfaces that drained well and resisted erosion far better than dirt tracks. They built sturdy retaining walls and agricultural terraces on the steep hillsides of their homeland, structures that held firm against heavy rains. Imagine walking up a path in ancient Phoenicia, your sandals crunching over a road made from the glittering, iridescent remnants of a royal robe. This was a civilization that understood the true meaning of value, extracting every last ounce of utility from their resources. They turned a waste disposal nightmare into a foundation for their infrastructure, proving that sustainability is not a modern idea, but an ancient and very practical form of intelligence. This clever reuse of the murex shells demonstrates a holistic view of industry that was centuries ahead of its time, where the byproduct of one process became the raw material for the next in a perfect closed loop of ingenuity. Their relentless drive for efficiency even reshaped the very form of the written word. While the scroll had served as the dominant format for centuries, unrolling and re-rolling lengthy texts was a cumbersome process, especially for a merchant needing to quickly reference a contract or a ship's log. The Phoenician solution was both practical and profoundly influential. The hinged writing tablet. Picture two thin panels of wood, each hollowed out and filled with a layer of dark wax. These panels were joined along one edge by leather thongs or metal hinges, creating a primitive but functional book that could be opened and closed. A scribe would use a stylus to inscribe letters into the wax surface, and if the message was no longer needed, the wax could be warmed and smoothed over, ready for reuse. This was the ultimate portable, recyclable notebook for the ancient world. A captain could carry one on deck, jotting down navigational sightings or cargo manifests without battling a flapping roll of papyrus in the wind. A trader could keep his accounts in a series of these tablets, bound together, creating a multi-page record that was far easier to navigate than a long, continuous scroll. This innovation, the hinged and multi-leaved writing surface, was the critical evolutionary step between the single scroll and the bound codex. It introduced the concept of the page, a discrete, turnable unit of information. While the Romans are often credited with the widespread adoption of the codex, the underlying idea of hinged wooden leaves was a tool of Phoenician commerce long before. Their pragmatic need for quick reference and durable record-keeping planted the seed for a format that would, centuries later, revolutionize how knowledge was stored and accessed. The transition from scroll to codex was one of the most important media shifts in human history, enabling faster cross-referencing, more compact libraries, and the very structure of the modern book. And it all began with a simple, wax-filled wooden board, clasped shut against the salt spray, carrying the mundane details of an empire built on trade. Their skill with metal went far beyond stamping coins. A Phoenician smith could make silver whisper and gold sing, transforming raw ingots into objects of breathtaking complexity and devotion. This mastery of metallurgy was not a single craft, but an entire symphony of techniques applied to silver, gold, and bronze. They understood the unique soul of each metal. Silver, the backbone of their economy, was not merely melted and poured into coin molds. It was painstakingly refined to a high purity, then hammered into thin, pliable sheets. These sheets could be shaped into elegant bowls adorned with repoussé designs, where the metal was tooled from the back to create raised scenes of hunting or mythology. They perfected filigree, twisting fine silver wires into delicate, lace-like patterns that were soldered onto the surface of cups and jewelry. And for their most intricate work, they used granulation, fusing microscopic spheres of silver onto a background to form shimmering geometric or floral motifs, a technique that required a flawless understanding of heat and chemistry to avoid melting the delicate grains. Their work in gold was equally sophisticated, producing jewelry that was exported from Egypt to Sardinia. But perhaps their most impactful legacy was in bronze, an alloy of copper and tin that they sourced from their vast trade networks. Phoenician bronze smiths cast everything from the fearsome rams that tipped their warships to the sturdy tools that built them. They supplied entire cultures with superior axes, saws, and chisels, effectively setting the industrial standard for the ancient Mediterranean. Yet their most spiritually significant creations were the bronze statuettes of gods and goddesses, like the enigmatic Baal Hammon. These were not crude idols, but finely detailed figures, cast using the lost wax method to capture every fold of a garment and every curl of a beard. A temple dedicated to a Phoenician deity from Carthage to Cyprus would gleam with the light of silver offerings and the solemn presence of bronze deities, all products of a technical craftsmanship that was, in its own way, a form of worship. They were not just moving metal, they were engineering both the physical and the divine infrastructure of their world. Colonies were not isolated way stations, but the synapses of a vast thinking network. A ship leaving the Phoenician city of Tyre did not simply sail toward the unknown. It traveled along a predetermined chain of support. Its first stop might be the island of Motia off Sicily, a fortified outpost where it could take on fresh water and unload cargo for distribution into the Italian peninsula. From there, it could catch favorable winds to Carthage on the North African coast, a colossal hub where goods from across the Mediterranean were sorted, repackaged, and sent on their way. Its ultimate destination could be Cadiz in southern Spain, a gateway to the Atlantic and the precious silver mines of the interior. Each of these nodes had a specialized purpose. Some colonies provided raw materials like the timber of Cyprus or the silver of Sardinia. Others, like Carthage, grew into powerful administrative centers that governed the entire Western network. They shared a common language, a common set of commercial laws, and a deep loyalty to the mother cities, creating a system that was both decentralized and incredibly cohesive. This was the true genius of their colonial model, its resilience. If one link in the chain was broken by a storm, a pirate raid, or a political upheaval, the entire network did not collapse. Ships could simply reroute to the next nearest colony, ensuring that the flow of goods and information never truly stopped. This interconnected web gave the Phoenicians a strategic depth that land-based empires could scarcely comprehend. While an army could march on a single city, it could not simultaneously besiege dozens of ports scattered across 3 continents. This network became a conduit for more than just trade goods. It transmitted technologies, artistic styles, and religious practices, weaving a shared cultural identity across thousands of miles of coastline. The strength of this system lay not in the walls of any single city, but in the strength of the bonds between them, a lesson in connectivity that would echo through the ages. Yet even the most resilient colonial network could not eliminate the brutal mathematics of the sea. A single storm, one encounter with a hidden reef, could erase a merchant's entire fortune, sinking not just a ship but a family's legacy into the abyss. The staggering risk of total loss threatened to paralyze the very commerce that fueled their civilization. Their brilliant financial solution was a form of shared burden known as the bottomry loan. Here is how it worked. A merchant needing to fund a voyage could secure a loan from a wealthy investor, but with one extraordinary condition. The borrowed money was used to purchase the ship, outfit the crew, and acquire the trade goods. A contract was drawn up and the ship would set sail. If the vessel returned safely, the merchant would repay the loan with a substantial amount of interest, often as high as 30%, a premium for the immense risk the lender had taken. But if the ship was lost to pirates, storms, or any other peril of the deep, the debt was completely forgiven. The lender absorbed the total loss. This was more than a simple loan. It was a primitive but powerful form of maritime insurance. The bottomry loan transformed an unthinkable catastrophe into a manageable financial setback. For the merchant, it meant that a shipwreck would not condemn his family to debt, slavery, or destitution. He could, in time, secure another loan and try again. For the investor, it was a high-stakes gamble where the lure of huge returns from a successful voyage balanced the very real possibility of losing everything. This system injected a crucial dose of courage into the heart of their economy. It encouraged merchants to finance longer, more dangerous, and potentially more profitable journeys, knowing that their personal liability had a firm limit. The entire concept was built on a foundation of sophisticated trust and legal precedent. Contracts were detailed, specifying the ship, the route, the cargo, and the exact conditions under which the debt would be voided. This financial innovation was a quiet revolution in risk management. It acknowledged the terrifying power of the sea while refusing to be cowed by it. By creating a mechanism to spread the potential for disaster, the Phoenicians ensured that no single tragedy could halt the relentless engine of their trade. This early model of insurance would be refined over centuries, eventually evolving into the complex global industry that protects everything from container ships to international flights today, all tracing its conceptual origins back to a simple agreement between a nervous merchant and a daring investor on a Levantine dock. Their final and most profound invention was not an object you could hold, but a force that reshaped civilization itself. The Phoenicians became the ancient world's great transmission belt, a dynamic network of cultural exchange that connected isolated centers of power into a single, interactive system. They did not merely transport goods, they moved the very building blocks of culture. An Egyptian artistic motif would travel on a Phoenician ship to a workshop in Crete, where it was adapted by a local artisan and later inspired a Greek potter. Mesopotamian mathematical concepts carried on scrolls and in the minds of traders found new applications in the marketplaces of Sicily. The technology for forging superior iron, developed in Anatolia, was disseminated westward through their colonies, revolutionizing agriculture and warfare across the Mediterranean. This was their ultimate legacy, the active and deliberate knitting together of a fractured world. They stood between the colossal empires of Egypt and Mesopotamia and the budding societies of Greece and Italy, not as conquerors but as interpreters and conduits. A single Phoenician merchant vessel was a floating university, its hold containing not just silver and cloth, but the seeds of philosophy, the blueprints for new machines, and the aesthetic tastes that would define entire eras. The vibrant, cosmopolitan culture of classical Greece did not spring from a vacuum. It was fed by a constant stream of ideas that had been filtered, translated, and delivered by Phoenician traders who had been doing business with the Mycenaeans for centuries. They provided the raw materials and the technical knowledge that allowed other civilizations to flourish, often obscuring their own role in the process. The Phoenician genius lay in connection. They understood that progress is rarely a solitary invention, but a collaborative spark that jumps from one culture to another, growing brighter with each new hand that holds it. Their empire of trade was, in the end, an empire of the mind, creating a shared foundation upon which the future would be built. They vanished from popular memory not because they failed, but because they succeeded so completely, their identity dissolving into the very fabric of the world they helped to create. Their success was no accident of history. A unique cultural engine drove this relentless wave of innovation, fueled by geography and a distinct worldview. Wedged between the sea and the mountains with limited fertile land, the Phoenician city-states could never rely on agriculture to build an empire. Their survival and their spectacular wealth depended entirely on their wits. They became the ultimate middlemen, positioned at the crossroads of the ancient world, where the land routes of Mesopotamia met the sea lanes of the Mediterranean. This was not a comfortable position, it was a relentless pressure cooker that demanded constant adaptation. If they could not produce enough food, they had to trade for it. If they wanted the silver of Spain or the tin of Britain, they had to offer something of equal or greater value. This fundamental need created a culture that prized practical solutions above all else. Their inventions were rarely born from abstract curiosity. They were direct answers to concrete problems. How do we keep our ships from sinking? We invent the keel and pitch caulking. How do we navigate when we lose sight of land? We master the stars and create the first navigational tools. How do we protect our trade routes? We design the most advanced warships the world has ever seen. Every breakthrough served a clear commercial or maritime purpose. This pragmatic, profit-driven mindset made them brilliant assimilators. As they traveled from Egypt to Anatolia to Greece, they were exposed to 1,000 different ideas and technologies. They did not simply collect these curiosities, they analyzed them with a merchant's eye for improvement. They saw the complex writing systems of their neighbors and asked how they could be simplified for business. They observed local glassmaking techniques and sought a way to mass produce it. Their genius lay in connection and refinement, taking a good idea from one culture and making it better, faster, and more tradable. They were the original optimization algorithm, constantly streamlining the processes of commerce and travel. This exposure to diverse cultures also gave them a remarkable flexibility. To trade with the Egyptians, you had to understand their gods and their customs. To bargain with a Greek chieftain, you needed to know what he valued. This daily immersion in difference fostered a cosmopolitan outlook that was rare in the ancient world, freeing them from the rigid traditions that often stifled innovation elsewhere. Their identity was not rooted in a single piece of land, but in the web of trade that connected them to everywhere. This is why they were such prolific inventors. Their very existence depended on thinking smarter, moving faster, and building better than anyone else. They turned the relentless pressure of commerce into the power that built the modern world. This genius for practical connection came with a profound historical vulnerability. Their greatest strength, a decentralized network of trade rather than a centralized land empire, became their greatest weakness in the arena of memory. The Phoenicians built their world on papyrus, a lightweight and portable material perfect for merchants and sailors, but tragically perishable. While the Romans and Greeks carved their laws and triumphs into stone and baked their administrative records onto durable clay tablets, the primary records of Phoenician civilization, their contracts, their ship logs, their literature, simply crumbled to dust in the humid air of the Levant or were consumed by the flames of their enemies. They left behind no Rosetta Stone, no vast imperial library shouting their name into the future. Their history was written on water and sand. This erasure was brutally finalized by the wrath of Rome. The utter destruction of Carthage in the final Punic War was more than a military conquest. It was an act of cultural annihilation. The city was systematically razed, its fields salted, and its population killed or enslaved. For generations, the only stories told of the Phoenicians were written by their Greek and Roman rivals, who often portrayed them as cunning, untrustworthy merchants, downplaying their innovations to glorify their own. It is no wonder that the alphabet was remembered as a Greek invention, or that advanced ship designs were credited solely to the Romans. The victors not only wrote the history, they actively dismantled the evidence of their rivals' brilliance. Yet the truth has a way of resurfacing. Modern archaeology is now the great corrective, painstakingly reassembling the fragments they left behind. From the deep-water shipwrecks discovered off the coast of Malta, their cargo still perfectly preserved in the anaerobic clay, to the meticulous analysis of pottery shards and the deciphering of rare stone-carved inscriptions, a new picture is emerging. We are learning to read the story not in the grand monuments they rarely built, but in the everyday debris of their commerce, the murex shell middens, the standardized weights, and the traces of their workshops. Each new discovery is a quiet rebuttal to the ancient propaganda, proving that the invisible network they built was in fact the most enduring invention of all, a legacy now being pulled piece by piece from the silent earth. Their legacy is a story written not in stone, but in the very air we breathe and the words we speak. From the 22 simple letters that gave us the power to write, to the mighty trireme that defined naval warfare for 1,000 years, their innovations formed the invisible architecture of the ancient world. They built the first global trade network, secured it with revolutionary ships, and funded it with corporate ventures and maritime insurance. They colored the robes of emperors with Tyrian purple and filled common homes with brilliant glass. They gave us standardized weights for honest trade and the dry dock to maintain their mastery of the sea. Yet for all this, they remain history's great ghost, the forgotten innovators whose names were erased by time and conquest. So much of what we consider the bedrock of civilization carries their silent signature. Which of their 28 world-changing inventions leaves you most astonished? Was it the democratic power of the alphabet or the sheer audacity of their voyage around Africa? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you enjoyed unraveling this historical mystery, subscribe to keep exploring the lost stories that built our world.